What is up, everyone? Welcome to the second episode of Unleashed. I hope you've all had a great week. This question this week was sent in by a young person who was beginning her walk with God. It's such a blessing as well to have new members joining our faith. The question that she asked was, how can we live according to God's will and still find pleasure in the things we enjoy in a way that keeps us close to Him? So sit tight, and we'll be diving into that question today with my fellow members here. Start us off with a word of prayer, and then we'll get into it. So if everyone could just bow their heads and close their eyes. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you for another wonderful day of life, Lord. I thank you for bringing us all here together tonight where we're able to discuss this question that's been given in, Lord. Lord, I pray that you pour out your Holy Spirit, that we're able to talk about the question in a way that is able to help people that are listening, Lord. I pray that you also be with our youth, be with our pastors and our churches, as during this time, Lord, there's a lot of uncertainty. Just be with our church, Lord, and be with our members here tonight as well. And we ask all these things in your wonderful name. Amen.
Amen.
So yeah, guys, I hope everyone's had a good week. Tap sounded a bit drained today, but I'm praying for strength, bro. You've got this. You've got this. So we'll start off with, so the question is, how can we live according to God's will and still find pleasure in the things we enjoy? Sorry, just give me 1 second. My throat is like killing me. Hold on.
Must be COVID.
Also, my mug has like a broken handle. Like all my mugs have like broken handles. I don't know why. So if you see that, just don't peep that.
Sorry. Or maybe we should talk in your rusty voice a bit.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, I think with the habits you have to really take the Bible and like Philippians 4 verse 8. It gives us a perfect principle, like with any habits you have or hobbies you have been doing, which we had before. And I think before I go there, if you feel like your hobby is wrong and you've been convicted on it, then there's a fact that, that thing is probably wrong because God is probably hitting you at some point. Philippians 4:8 says that, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. So with any hobbies you have, they have got to pass this test. Do you get what I'm saying? Is this hobby something that's going to draw me closer to God or further from God? Because ultimately, everything we do has to give glory to who? To God. Do you get what I'm saying? But if that hobby doesn't represent any of these things here, then dude, just relax a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have 2 points about these questions. So the first one, and it's when things start getting wrong, it's when you start asking God to give you permission to do certain things, right? So you can't negotiate with God. He already said what is good and what is wrong. And if you can't just accept it, I think there is a problem there. And the other point here, for me especially, is if you feel that there is something wrong of what you're doing, it's because the Holy Spirit is still knocking in your door, which is good. So that's the other part, like there is so many people in this world. Like I have so many friends, like the way how they live their lives, they think they're okay, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. And for me, especially, I thank God when I feel like if I'm going in the wrong path and I feel someone is knocking on my door, I know it's the Holy Spirit that it's there telling me, hey, that's wrong. And going to the first point, you can't negotiate that. So just come back.
If I can add there, I think most of the time, you like what Yossi has said, you see people doing things and they seem like there's not even, there's no care in the world about that. But you must not forget, I would say, is that I think that's the beauty of God, and that He also gives you the ability to make your choice. I mean, you're not an animal that someone has to think for you and says, hey, bingo, come and sit here. No, it's you. You are given that freedom of choice. And as Yossi said, if you are in that freedom of choice and you are realizing that what you're doing, there is something that is telling you this is probably not a good thing, you should probably take heed to that as quickly as possible. So, yeah.
Okay, like I just looked at the definition of the word hobby. It's something that's done regularly in someone's own leisure time for pleasure, you know. So it's something that gives you pleasure in doing. You know, some people like football. You know, you can play football for free. No one is paying you to play football, for example. But if the thing that you're doing for pleasure now brings, you know, pain and heartache to the heart of God, then you have to decide, okay, what do I really want to have in this whole thing? Do I want to get closer to God, or do I want to have pleasure? And the thing is about the pleasure we have on earth is temporary. Do you get what I'm saying? So now you have to think about opportunity cost, because if you take this, you miss out on this. If you miss out on this, you're taking this. So it's about, you know, opportunity cost. Balance what you want to have. Do you want to have the pleasure now of this thing? And the thing is, like, you know, if it is a bad habit that you have or hobby you have per se, is that when you do change that, when you do let go of that hobby, you have to find something to replace it. Because if you don't replace it, it's going to come back 10 times harder to let go of, if you get what I'm saying. So if you analyze that thing and see it's wrong, then just try to find something to replace it. If it's maybe, what hobby can you possibly think of that are bad? Guys, anyone?
I think like maybe I don't know, like
Traveling?
Traveling.
My hobby.
wait, what did she say?
Nice hobby, traveling.
Oh.
Then some of us wouldn't be here.
Yeah, man, you know, some of us won't be here, you know.
Traveling is the joy of my life. Please don't say.
But I guess she's got a point. It depends who you're traveling to.
On what days?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right.
But I would say, like, sometimes God doesn't want you to go where you want to go, if that can
True.
possible.
But I guess it goes to what Carlos said at the beginning, is that, you know, your hobby might be, you know, perfect. Nothing wrong with a hobby. But like when you're doing the hobby, do you get what I'm saying? If that hobby is going to cause you to break God's law, then that's not a hobby for you at that specific time. So if it's a case of where your hobby is only played on a Saturday during the Sabbath hours, then you might want to consider doing it on a Sunday, you know, or maybe during the week on the evenings. I know some guys that play football at work, they have a team that they play at, you know, maybe on Thursday evening. You might want to reconvene and have a different day for that particular hobby. So like that way, you're having that pleasure, but it's not affecting your relationship with who? With God. Do you get what I'm saying? So you can try
Just to add, to add on what Talk was saying there, I can tell you from I don't know what you call it here, but I think from about, say, grade 3 up until Form 6, so my last year in high school, I went to schools that were not Seventh-day Adventist schools. And every Saturday you were required to play a sport. And I mean, it's not like I was the most sportsy human being. I can assure you I probably wasn't. But you had to pick a sport and you had to play a sport on Saturday, regardless if it was for the 5th or the 7th team. They had a team for everyone. Crazy. But anyway, I can also see that the way I was involved in that, and then moving into my first year in university, there was just no recognition that, you know, what you're doing, today's Sabbath, you shouldn't be doing that. You know, it was out of the window, because all I was now used to was, I can do that. If I can play a bit of sport then, I'm sure I can do that on Saturday. And even when I was, say, attending church, I can probably safely say that my brain and mind probably wasn't in it 100%. So there is you know, that element of doing something that might be right, like playing a sport. It still can be wrong, if you're doing it and you're breaking God's laws, what Taku was saying. So, it's something just to think about.
Yeah, there's something that I would like to add about it, and it's in my personal experience. When you walk closer to God, you start losing interest in some of the things. I would say that in these last few years, my habits and my hobbies just change from earth to heaven. Actually, like I don't enjoy doing things that I used to love before, just because now I feel like it's wrong, or it's something in my heart that's just like, you're wasting your time. You should doing like heavenly things. I would say. I have an example about this. And it was about when I was younger, I would say. I used to read Harry Potter's books, and I used to love it. And I watch all the movies and so on. So the thing is, like a few years ago, I just wanted to read something, and I picked one of those books and I started reading. And then I realized, like, after I read, like, I don't know, 2 pages, it was like, whoa, it's just too deep, like, I don't want to read these anymore. It doesn't please me anymore. It's not like I'm reading something that is making me, I don't know, closer to God. And I feel that that's the end, like the ultimate purpose of my life is to be in heaven. So what am I doing to build on that statement?
I think like just bouncing off what Taku and Taps were saying. I'm just trying to find it here. When we're talking about like some hobbies are okay on certain times, but it's like when we start doing them on the Sabbath, or if they start breaking certain laws. I think that, like, just for the viewers that are watching, that like maybe when it comes to these circumstances, like where we know what we should be doing, but then we do the opposite, I think God then judges us accordingly to that. But if we like were in ignorance of certain things, God knows our hearts. So don't fret if like you start to examine yourself, and you start to see that maybe there's like some things that you could work on that you need to start veering away from. Like, say in your hobby is like, well, the only example I could think of in this moment is just like playing on the Sabbath, just because like I'm very sporty and we used to. It's just like, so don't fret if you start to find out those things and you're only just finding them out now. You didn't know any better at the time. So, but for one thing, to offer some encouragement. If you do start to find these things, once you start your examination of yourself, God is always there to help. So you just have to take small steps and like pray frequently. That's just like my little bit of advice for that, because that's how I got over playing on the Sabbath, because it just wasn't that great. But yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
I think that's sort of the beauty of this as a podcast video. I don't know technology, but anyway, it's not, you put your shoes in the person who has asked this question. It's not, at least my responses are not about condemnation or putting someone down, because we've all been there. I mean, potentially you're going to go there again. You never know how life treats you, but you don't wish that on anyone. So it's not about trying to put down someone or condemn them for what they've done, but sort of, as you've rightly pointed out, Carlos, like offering that sort of encouragement, because I think it's areas that we've all been in, or areas maybe you're still going through. I don't know, how our lives are like in private, but there is a passage on a read here from Steps to Christ, page 46, which says, God does not require us to give up anything that is for our best interest to retain. In all that he does, he has the well-being of his children in view. Would that all who have not chosen Christ might realize that he has something vastly better to offer them than they are seeking for themselves. Man is doing the greatest injury and injustice to his own soul when he thinks and acts contrary to the will of God. No real joy can be found in the path forbidden by him who knows what is best and who plans for the good of his creatures. The path of transgression is the path of misery and destruction. So just a bit of, I love that, especially that little start that, God doesn't require us to give up anything that is for our own best interest. So when you hear the little voice knocking and telling give this up, maybe it is in your best interest to do so.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's more like something that, like, if you look in the book of Romans chapter 7, where Paul is like, he's in conflict with his mind, he sees what he needs to do, but then he also sees what he doesn't have to do, like the sinful, well, let's say like a hobby that's really bad and whatever and so forth, right? And he's struggling, and he's like, that which I know I shouldn't be doing, that I am doing. That which I know I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not doing any of that. Lord, how am I going to deal with this thing? Because I know what's right, for example. And I think a lot of us, well, for me particularly, I was raised up in an Adventist family. So like the commandments are always drilled like bang, 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 over and over and over and over and over again. And it's like whenever I see myself going off track, I know that this is wrong. Do you get what I'm saying? And I kind of like hear my grandma's voice like shouting in my ear like, hey, what are you doing? And it's always funny because like the struggle normally happens when you go to university, when you haven't got someone watching over your eye or whatever, looking over your shoulder and so forth. But I think the key thing is that, as Paul identifies in that passage in Romans chapter 8, is verse 1, he says that, I thank God through Jesus Christ, because the only way you can overcome any hobbies that are drawing you from God is through Jesus Christ. Do you get what I'm saying? Of ourselves, we can't even do it. Do you get what I'm saying? Imagine someone, right, like a lot of guys in England have this as well, Adventist guys as well, where they, since the age of 3, they're playing football. 4, playing football. 5, playing football. 6, playing football. 13, playing football. And then now they get told, okay, you need to sign a contract to play football, but then now you'll be playing on Saturdays. How do you turn it down?
I think when it becomes like to like that, it's like really hard because you've like put in so much like effort beforehand. And it's like, I think what it comes down to though is like really a decision that you have to deeply examine yourself and just see where you stand. But I even like me personally, I don't even know the answer to that, because it's like, yeah, I know that God is like wants us to do a certain thing as well, but it's like I think a lot of us struggle with the idea of giving something up that we put so much effort into, like in that, using that example. But just like the disciples as well, I think when
Sorry, Carlos, just
go
interrupt.
ahead.
It's come from what Taku said. How do you turn down that contract? I don't know if you remember. There was a time where the pastor Jean Noel at that school, Mount Ross School, is that correct? I don't know if you guys remember that. Yeah, so he had a series, and I remember he was showing us pictures of this one, I think it was a wrestler or boxer, very karate fighter, very successful guy, and could have continued. I think I really hope I'm narrating this correctly. You can correct me if you want on the comments, but at the end of it, he gave it up, and I think from the way that Pastor Jean Noel really relayed this story is that there is life after you've given up something like that. Fair enough, you've got a very lucrative football contract that's going to probably take you places that we see on TV all the time. But at the same time, it's like, okay, where are your values and where are your morals? And I would strongly like to believe that there is life after maybe you've turned that down. It's not the end of the world. It might feel like it, but I know for a fact if I went to my dad and said, I've got a football deal, we're not playing. We are not playing. Come rain, come sunshine, no matter how much money it is, we're not playing. So it's like your values and the morals, and also your personal relationship with God. And you get that with, even in work, you're going to get people sometimes who are told, hey, you got to come and work on Saturday. How many times do we see that? To this day, we still see that. And yet you still see the person who's like, yeah, they asked me to come to it, but I just said no. And you ask them, oh, why? I'm like, because it's church and I want to be here. So you get that movement within you, and you want to be keeping God's, God's laws. But yeah, that passage on Noel's story, please, you can correct me. I'm all right with that.
And I think as the thing is that with the hobby, as it defined, is that it's something that gives you pleasure. It's something you enjoy doing. Do you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately it goes to the point where it's realized you analyze yourself. And I think Carlos mentioned this before. This thing that I'm doing, that I'm focusing on right now, where is it taking me in relation to my relationship with God? That has always got to be the final thing that you analyze as well. But I think before I comment, I'll let Carlos speak, because I think you had a point you were spoken to before. Taps mentioned.
I so apologize.
Oh no, it's fine. It's totally fine. I'm not even sure if my point would really make any sense. But I think what I might have been going, if I can just find it here in my notes.
I like to add a verse to what Taps was saying that I think is so accurate, and I'm gonna read this for you. It's in Matthew 6:19, mm-hmm. and it's about treasures in heaven. It says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and their thieves do not break in steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And I think it's just what Taps was saying, like, where do you want to keep your treasures? If you ask me, I would say, yes, please, in heaven.
Amen.
Amen.
What I was sorry. Oh, you can go. It's okay. It's all good.
No. Go. No. I can't cut you again. You think about 3.
No, it's all good. So what I was gonna say is, like, so in our Bible study this week for the previous week that we've just had, with the Brentwood youth that I'm kind of in, there was like a question that came up in the study, and it was saying something along the lines of, what is the cost of following Jesus? And the answer that I kind of got to that was, in following Christ, sometimes we lose quite a lot of things. We could lose family members, maybe due to the fact that they have opposite beliefs to what we do. You could lose friends because they might think that could mock or tease. You could lose a job because maybe they ask you to work on Sabbath and you can't work on Sabbath because of your morals and beliefs. But I think that, like, with the example of the disciples, when Jesus asked them to follow him, they gave up everything just to follow him, and they put all their faith in God. And I think in the same way, we should kind of do the same and take that as an example. Just in the sense that, like, yes, we might lose some things here. We might lose a hobby here, or we might lose a job here. The reward in heaven is, like, so much greater. And I think you guys have already highlighted quite a few of those points. But it's just like, yeah, it's a very powerful thing. Just knowing and believing in God and thinking, and knowing that there is a reward afterwards in all the things that we give up. But yeah, so back to what Taku was just about to say before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I remember, like, when I first became a vegetarian and soul pot and all these things, and I made a choice to give up drinking dairy milk. And I remember I tried soya milk for the very first time. It was the worst thing ever. Like, no one ever like. I couldn't hack it, man. Literally, it was a struggle. But as time went on, I got used to it. And now I don't even see the difference anymore. But the thing I wanted to go to a bit more to this is that, you know, sometimes when you look at Christianity, like you have this whole things of like, you know, you have to give up this, give up smoking, give up drinking, give up this, give up that, give up that. And sometimes you can see Christianity as a very sad and gloomy religion, you know. Do you get what I'm saying? But I think sometimes we should try to focus maybe what hobbies can we do now, and what hobbies can we do that are purely just pure hobbies that we can do anytime.
I think that
Go for a run.
Oh, sorry. No. Oh. Yes, amen. Run a marathon, no training.
I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the best runner, but, you know, give it a go, or a walk. Get in the habit of doing a bit of exercise. I'm not going to say I'm the best exercise. Jeez, like.
But is there pleasure in running though? That's painful, man.
Oh, I don't know. There's some people I know that find pleasure in that. It's weird.
Man, you live in New Zealand. I've seen people who run for days. It's me to shame, that's for sure.
And just going off on that point that Taku said, that like finding things that are enjoyable, and also going back to the thing where like sometimes people see Christianity as a like a doom and gloom place, like you can't do this, you can't do that. It's not like the Lord doesn't want us to have fun. In Ecclesiastes 2 verse 24, it says, "There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God." And God knows that living like here on earth is hard. But he wants us to have enjoyment while we toil away. But I think we just have to take into consideration what we find our pleasure in, I guess. But just going back to the point of like hobbies and that, back to the question, I think once we like start to identify whether or not the hobby itself that we're partaking in goes against what God's plan for our life is, like as in like the commandments and his laws, I think that like if you find, because there are a lot of hobbies that like don't, like fishing, hiking, like drawing, painting, there's so many things that like we can do that don't go against any of God's commandments and laws. And in all those little spheres, or like the little worlds that people like have enjoyment in, God is always able to use you in that like sphere of influence to like influence other people. But I think it's like once you start putting that hobby on a pedestal, or you start spending more time on it and it becomes your top priority, I think that's when that hobby starts to get toxic and you need to start drawing yourself away from it. But yeah, that was just all I had to say on that little part.
What are some of the that you know that it's getting a bit toxic or it's getting a bit too much?
Oh, like hobbies. I have a few mates that are like really into cars, and they're like 24 hours. Like they will just spend all their time on the car. Like they won't see the girlfriend, they won't see family. Like they don't even text the boys on the group chat anymore. Like it's that bad. It's like, yeah, it's like once they really start investing above everything else, I think that's when like it starts to get like toxic in a way, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, we had I used to play this Sunday, like this football with some guys from church on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes a hobby can be innocent, but what it brings out in you might not be innocent. So, you know, us guys, you know, at church, you know, we're meeting on a Sunday, we're just playing football, you know. We're all from church. What can possibly go wrong? Do you get what I'm saying? And then one guy gets a slide tackle, and you start hearing this guy just swearing and literally, you name it, he's doing, and it's getting violent. And I'm like, you know what? This might be pure, but then for yourself, assess yourself. Okay, is this hobby drawing me closer to God or not? Do you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I had to leave. I stopped playing football with those guys. I never went back. Literally, I left the WhatsApp because, like, guys, you know, this thing is really not helping me in any way develop my Christian walk. So I think sometimes it goes to what you said before, like, you know, you have to really scrutinize and analyze, you know, where is this hobby taking me? Is it drawing me closer or further away from God? And as you do that, you can literally make up your own conclusions as to whether the hobby is good or bad. Because I'm not going to say that it's bad for you or it's good for you, but then you have to make that decision yourself, because that way you own that decision. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
As opposed to it's been imposed on you. And yeah, so.
Like, what was the reaction when you decided to leave?
Hmm?
When you
The reaction,
decided to leave? Yeah, what was their reaction?
that guys were surprised. They were like, oh, they used to call me Benteke, innit? Like, because of this footballer. Benteke, you know, playing. Guys, nah, this is just not the place for me. Literally, because the guys would get so violent, and I would begin to see them now in a different light. Do you get what I'm saying? So I was beginning to lose respect for some of the guys because the way they're acting as if they were little kids. Like, no, I can't do this, and I just left.
Yeah. No, I was just asking because, someone who's listening might have been like, oh, what was the reaction? I really wonder what the reaction was like. And, it's going to be surprise. Hey, it might be even, a few insults coming your way. That's the nature of human beings. But I think, as you said, if you made the decision for yourself and for your walk with God, then it's your life at the end of the day that you want to take control of. So yeah, good for you, Benteke.
Yeah, I also like what Tab says before, and it's really important for the people that is going to listen to this thing, and it's that we are not here to judge anybody, right? So I don't think our life is perfect, and for you guys are gonna watch this, if you feel identify with some of our stories, just please comment to us here, so we can also share that stories and feel that we are not alone in this fight. I think we all fight every day to get closer to God, and that's the reason why we ask these questions, because we are also fighting. So don't feel alone. Don't feel judged, please. And yeah, that's why we are here as well.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you for that. Just like we needed that just to clarify to some people too, because like I really don't want us to like come off as if like we're like judging people, because we're not. But yeah, I think like is there anything else, like any other point of angles or like angles that anyone else wants to talk about?
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. Is like when the example I gave before, like people that start playing football at the age of 3, and then they develop good academies and stuff like that. Is that with the hobbies that you have, because it seems like you find pleasure in, they are very difficult to give up. Very, very difficult to give up. But I think it's the element of that, as difficult as it is, you have to literally analyze it and make a decision. Sometimes, when you try to ignore something, it literally, the guilt you feel when you do that thing is crazy. It is literally crazy. Do you know what I'm saying? Nobody has to say anything to you, but then you of yourself, this thing is wrong. So you have to analyze yourself. Okay, is this hobby literally good or bad? And pray about it. Some things you might struggle with for the whole rest of your life. So it goes to the point you have to have victory over those specific things on a daily basis. Don't think because you prayed for it today, you don't have to pray for it tomorrow. You might have the same temptation again tomorrow, and then literally pray for it every single time. And the most important thing is that, whatever hobby it is, if it is a bad hobby, find something else to replace it with. There's a story in the Bible where a woman had a demon, and the demon was cast out, and the demon went about, roaming around. And then the demon was like, oh, let me go back to where I came from. And then it went to the person, then it saw the person was literally, their heart was empty. And then it came back twice as strong inside that person. So if you do let go of something, it can be maybe an addiction or a particular thing you're doing over and over again. I plead with you, literally bring it to the altar of God, pray for it daily. And when you have that thing, replace it with something else. Don't let that space be vacant, because when that temptation comes again, you will go again and do the exact same thing again. Yeah.
You see, I've often found myself with a hobby. Sometimes you're just like, it's just a hobby. Or then the way I like to sometimes think of it, and then you switch it over to a habit, because a hobby can, to get to that stage of a hobby continuously happening, there's that element of it being a habit. I bite my nails. I hate it. I've tried to stop. I consciously tried to stop. I'm taking it to the altar of God, as Taku has said. But, there comes a time where you say, okay, this is now a bad habit. It's the same thing when you get to that hobby. You will know this is now a bad hobby. Why? Because it's now repetitive. It's now something you can do. And I think the dangerous part is where you do something without even, blinking twice. That's where you're now in sort of dangerous territory. So if you still I really like Yossi's point. If you're still getting that little knock in the heart, then someone is still there for you.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, you remind me of something when you were speaking the tops, like literally when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, I loved music. I still do right now, literally. I love music, like the American rap songs. I would download them on my MP3 and, I would burn CDs for people and I'd listen to it going to school, going to sleep. And I knew, there are some songs, right, that don't get released like publicly, but they are there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those songs, I would find them and have them on my MP3 playlist. And I love music so much. And when I went to this one family at church where the guys were talking about syncopation and breaking down like the subliminal message that you get in songs and how they affect your behavior and X, Y, Z, I noticed literally, right, that I was had a short temper, surprisingly, like normally, as a result of this music. I was like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And I used to swear a lot. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Do you get what I'm saying? And I kid you not, I literally cut all the music. The swearing stopped. You see what I'm saying? And the short temper literally just subsided away. Do you get what I'm saying? And like the way that, like, the music videos that you watch on MTV or whatever, yeah, like they have, naked women dancing there and whatever. So you objectify women. That stopped. Do you get what I'm saying? And then from the age of literally, I started singing, like, as a part of, or in a congregational thingy, like in a group, whatever, at the age of 18 in church. But before then, I never sang anything, literally nothing, literally. But it's that point where, like, there are some hobbies we have that we have developed for so long and that have literally damaged our character and have brought out the worst things in us. And you see that when you give up those hobbies, you will then see that something that you've been struggling with as well, a lot for many years, they start just coming off, literally. And as they come off, God gives you new things to focus your talents on, or whatever it may be, and He allows you to use those things to glorify God. Do you get what I'm saying? For example, Paul, he was a murderer, but he was a very smart murderer. You get what I'm saying? And God literally took his intellect and he used him to write literally most of the New Testament. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think we should allow God to literally scrutinize those hobbies. As David says, Lord, try me and search and know my heart and see if there be any wicked way in me and lead me into the way everlasting. So let's not let our hobbies hinder us, from that way everlasting. But let's allow God to scrutinize us that we may walk in that way everlasting.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And like having the scrutinizing part, and especially just examining yourself as well. I think that's very like an important part of this. I just have like a couple of points here, just as pointers, just for those that are watching and that need help, maybe finding or trying to discover if maybe your hobby is like defecting your character, or maybe it's like pulling you away from God. So like my rule of thumb that I've like over the study and I've written down is the first thing that we have to do is just examine and reflect on ourselves honestly. I think like honesty is the very key part to that, because you have to just look into yourself and just to see like and see the things that are like within you, I guess, that like maybe you like to do, and just see if that maybe they aren't the things that you should be doing, and maybe they are defecting your character, or maybe they're pulling you away. Yeah, and then there's like, so that's the examination part, and then the last two questions are like something that you can just ask yourself just to see if like just to like bounce your hobbies off, and just like a checklist basically. So the first one is, does my hobby go contrary to how God has asked me to live? If the answer is yes, then that's where we have to, or you have to, or we have to recognize that the problem lies in the hobby itself. And then if the answer is no, then the hobby itself is fine. And then the second question that you will ask yourself will be, does my hobby take time and energy that should be used for the Lord or for other things of greater importance? If the answer is yes, then we have to recognize that the problem isn't in the hobby or passion, but it's in our priority, and our priorities, sorry. And it's healthy to be passionate. God made us that way. So it's okay to feel passionate about your hobbies. But it's the problem lies in getting your priorities out of order that God intended. And the small rule of thumb that I use for priorities is, so it's like out of 4. So the first one is God, family, others, and then myself. That's just like how I write out my priorities. It's just a little key and little tip just to help out. But I hope that this has somehow helped out the people that are watching in some way. If anyone else has any closing comments, I think I'm basically done for tonight. Everyone's done? Cool.
The only closing thing I can say is, I think I said this even last week, and I probably will continue saying it, I suppose, each time that I'm on here, is that I don't think life was designed to be easy. Look at the life that Jesus lived here. It wasn't easy. But in all that he did it according to God's will. In all that he did it, even with the temptations that we face today, he also overcame. So, you know, I personally always take that hope that in my shortfalls, there is that hope that what Jesus went through, you can also overcome. And what others are going through, you know, talk about it. Have a word with somebody. You never know, you can relate on so many levels with somebody who's also going through the same thing that you are within the church. So you never know. Just feel free, feel open. And yeah, that'll be the last for me.
Cool. Was there anything from anyone else? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for tonight. Cool. Thank you everyone for watching and for tuning in to episode 2 of the Unleashed series. It's been a blast having this discussion with the team. Just a small quick plug. We have a new Brentwood youth page. I'll leave the tag right here, and it'll also be in the description. Follow us on that, and that just keeps us up to date on new episodes that are coming out, or any missionary stuff that we might be doing in the community. But yeah, everyone have a blessed week, and we'll see you in next week's episode.